Hey, hi everyone, and welcome back. This is Laura. Thanks for joining me for another tarot and intuition training. This is a training that I've adapted from a training that I usually don't do for brand new students. I've started to do this training for beginners students though, and I'm actually getting really good results. What I'm realizing as I start doing more introductory level trainings on the Celtic Cross spread itself is I have a whole set of students that are sometimes more intrigued by the positions in a spread and what their intuition feeds them just from laying out cards in this arrangement. That can be more intriguing and immediately helpful to students than knowing the actual definitions, quote unquote, meanings or interpretations of the tarot cards themselves. In other words, even if you don't really have much confidence yet in your ability to interpret the quote-unquote meanings of the tarot cards themselves, sometimes people really seem to jumpstart their intuition simply by starting by laying out the cards in this arrangement. There's something very special about this arrangement that seems to sort of kick into gear different parts of the brain. Parts of the brain that, when they are prompted to think on an issue in the manner that I'm going to show you a Celtic crossbred can really prompt your brain to do, your intuition is kind of just switched on for a lot of people. Different people kind of approach and master their intuition by different degrees, with differing amounts of practice. For me, contemplation of the tarot images themselves was a very important part of my intuitive development, along with really paying attention to my dreams and things like that. But so welcome to the class, and so I'm going to do this as an introductory class, which means it doesn't really matter how much of a background you have on the tarot, even if you feel like you're an absolute beginner to tarot. What you're going to be able to do by the time you leave this class is really quite remarkable. By the time you leave this class, you're going to be able to pick up a deck of tarot cards or a deck of oracle cards of your choice, lay out a Celtic crossbred, and just by the observation process that we're going to prompt through a series of my top questions that I really sort of prompt myself with when I'm doing a Celtic cross spread, you're going to really feel very comfortable with this spread by the end of this training, no matter what deck you're choosing to read with. And you'll be able to see as we go through this spread why just these questions alone are really going to work wonderfully for prompting your intuition. So here is the Celtic cross spread. I've just changed slides, so if you guys are following along, it's time to sort of switch up the page. This is the Celtic cross spread diagrammed by me. I've used circles instead of squares or rectangles to illustrate the positions of the 10 cards in this reading. I've used circles here for a couple of different reasons. I don't want to distract students with the idea of whether a card is upright or reversed here. All I'm trying to diagram are the 10 cards and their meanings themselves. So hopefully I'm able to get this slide large enough on your screen that you can somewhat read the writing. I'm going to go over it with you now. The central card in the middle of that shape over on the left-hand side, and then there's sort of a line top to bottom of cards or bottom to top of cards on the right-hand side. The left-hand side we've got sort of the Celtic cross shape, and in the very center we have card 1. The card that is overlaid over the top of that is card 2. Card 3 is up above that. Card 4 is on the bottom. Card 5 is over on the far left-hand side of this diagram, and card 6 is over on the right-hand side of that shape kind of towards the middle of the whole layout here. Now, if we go right down to the very bottom of that right-hand row of cards on the right-hand side, the bottom card there is numbered 7, the card above that is 8, the card above that is 9, and the card there at the top is number 10. So as I recite what you see on these cards, we will do it in that order. This is basically something that I recite when I am laying these cards out in this shape. So we start with card 1. As I lay that card out for someone, I say, this is for you and all that you are. Card 2 crosses over that, and as I lay that card down, I say, this is what crosses you. Card 3 up at the top, this is right now, in the present moment. Card 4 down at the bottom says, this is the root. Card 5 over on the far left says, this is the near past. Card 6, kind of there in the middle on the right hand side of this shape, says, this is the near future. Card 7 down at the bottom right says, this is your attitude and outlook. The card above that, card 8, says, this is your current environment. Card 9 says, this is your hopes, your dreams, and your fears. And card 10 says, this is the outcome to aim for. So hopefully, I'll go over those one more time now without introducing the numbers, and you'll get the rhythm. And the more you hear these words and lay cards down as you recite this, it's going to be very, very easy, very quickly for you to remember what these cards' positions mean. So starting with the first card, this is for you and all that you are. This is what crosses you. This is right now, in the present moment. This is the root. This is the near past. This is the near future. This is your attitude. This is your environment. This is your hopes, dreams, and fears. And this is your outcome. Something like that I basically very rhythmically state as I lay those cards down. So you might want to just practice that over and over for yourself with a few things. Like, it's sort of a concept that I used to call, doing a lightweight reading, meaning a reading where, it wasn't sort of a life or death sort of really, really important thing, just something to read for yourself, that you could get a check-in with yourself and a confirmation with yourself if you later found yourself to be accurate. But it wasn't really like, too much was hinging on this. So that's what I call a lightweight reading. They're the perfect type of reading to do for yourself to practice this sort of thing. So do several lightweight readings in a row really quickly for yourself with this pattern, laying these cards out, reciting that, and you'll have this down in no time. These 10 positions are wonderful to have in one reading, because this really gives me the opportunity to read what I call a big picture reading. You get much more information out of a Celtic cross spread than you do a simple yes or no or choice kind of a spread with fewer cards. There are 10 pieces of information here, which really allows you, if you want to do a 10-card reading for yourself, even if you're just prompting with observation before you really get everything that my Tarot for Beginner students would get about the meaning of the tarot itself. Right here, just doing this practice, you can get a lot out of that in terms of a contemplative practice, because in part it allows you to really see a situation that you're reading on from so many different perspectives with these 10 cards. And guys, if you're hearing background noise, I apologize. I've got a little bit of a monsoon floating around outside my window here in northern Arizona, and a helicopter just flew by, which sometimes happens in the forest here. They're just trying to make sure that people aren't caught out in the rainstorm or something, I think. Okay, so now I'm going to switch up the slide again, and I'm going to go through these just 2 pages here of questions. I've got them all bulleted here. Again, if they're a little bit tricky to read on your screen, I'm going to be going through them bullet by bullet now. This is kind of the meat of our training today, our introductory level masterclass, where we're going to basically look at all of these different things that you can do with a 10 card reading, all of these different focuses. If you draw 10 cards and you're quite a beginner and you really don't know where to start with your interpretation, these are the top prompts that I've come up with for myself and my students. I use these two when I'm doing one of these readings. Here's the first one. The first thing I usually do is I look at the outcome card compared with cards 1 and 2. So the center 2 cards, 1 and 2, how do they compare to that last card, card 10, the outcome card at the top there? Are they similar suits or really different suits? What does the outcome card feel like? Does it feel like an attractive card, or does it feel like a not very attractive card? Was it in line with what the querent was hoping for? The querent is a word that we use to describe the person who is asking the question that the reading is answering. So if you're reading for someone else, the querent would be your client. If you're reading for yourself, you would be the querent. So those are good things to notice right away, because right there in that first question there, if you can answer that with anything at all, any observation at all, you've got something to share with the querent about where they are right now compared to where you predict they're going to be in the future. You get to compare where they're at right now to where they're at in the future. And that is the number one thing that people really are going to want you to summarize. They're going to want you to bring this issue up, and then for the rest of the reading, basically you're going to give them all of the facets of this through the other questions. So if you've got a really quick reading to do, I would very often recommend, if you have time to do nothing else with the cards in front of you, compare the outcome card to cards 1 and 2. Okay, next bullet point. Are there any court cards in the reading? Where are the court cards? Can the querent see how the court cards both represent people they know and aspects of the development of their own self? Is there one type of court card that has shown up more than once? Is there one suit that more than one court card has shown up in? And so on and so forth. So, excuse me, as this questioning sort of, I think probably suggests, the court cards are about mastery of the energetic qualities of whatever suit the court card has shown up in. It's about mastering the qualities of that suit. Whether you've got a page, which usually represents apprenticing, learning something new, or you've got a knight, which usually sort of represents aggressively going after something, pursuing something, manifesting something. A queen, which a queen would usually be the feminine mastery of the quality of the suits, versus the king, the masculine energetic mastery of the quality of the suits. When you have any of these court cards show up in the reading, you can immediately point to where the reading calls for that person to step up and master some experience to some new degree in their lives. So when I ask where those court cards show up, if you can see the court cards in a reading and say, oh, it showed up in this position, it showed up in the hopes, dreams, and fears position, versus, oh, it showed up in the root past. Well, what does that tell you about where the querent is in their mind, in their heart? So there's a whole set of really interesting questions there for people, and usually people ultimately, even if they're asking career-centered questions, they have questions that boil down to dealing with their relationships in life. And the court cards, because they so often represent people energetically that we're hanging out with in some regard in our lives, they are often very useful cards to understand with more depth for people. So that's one of my favorite prompt questions right there. Next bullet down. Is there a dominant suit in the reading? Notice if one suit just has lots and lots of cards show up. Where does the dominant suit, excuse me, I can't talk straight, suit show up? That's hard to say that 10 times fast. And which numbers in this suit are present. In Tarot for Beginners, we go into a lot more detail about the energetics of the 4 suits and how they correlate to the energetics of the 4 basic elements: fire, air, water, and earth. Root and near past cards. Let's go on to the next bullet and get through a few of these now that you guys kind of get the idea here. If you were to tell the story of the root and the near past of this reading, what would it be? And how do these 2 cards relate to each other? If I have the time in a reading, if one of my VIP clients comes along for about 3 hours of conversation with me over a VIP reading, which can sometimes take, the duration of a morning or an afternoon. They're longer readings. Sometimes we take breaks, but we usually end up chatting for about 3 hours in total. If I really have time to unpack and get into some in-depth analysis with a client of what is going on in their lives, this is a brilliant one to look at towards the beginning of a session, because if you can describe the root and the near past cards in the reading as if you were telling a story, the client is going to resonate with something you're saying, and they're hopefully, this is hopefully what I try to do here when I try to connect by telling the story to a client, is I want them to go, oh yeah, something about that feels spot on the money, and then I ask them some questions about whatever has resonated, and in this way I really get to know something that really feels pertinent to the client, and from that point on the reading can progress and I can give much deeper information. So even though you're not really telling someone something new when you're telling them what's happened in their past, I mean they already know what's happened in their past, right? What you can do, if you can really get a good read on those 2 cards, is you can build a tremendous amount of confirmation and trust with your client, because they know if you've described something accurately that's happened to them in the past or felt like it's happened to them in some respect, that is so valuable. And very often a client at that point can then open up and is willing to go deeper in the reading, and then they end up getting a much more valuable reading from you. So I love having the time to look with time at the root and near past cards. And sometimes, if the client is new to intuitive readings, I'll also use these cards if they feel bang on the money, and I'll say, okay, well, those are the root and near past cards, and usually if they feel pretty accurate, that's a good confirmation to me that this reading is pretty much bang on the money. So it gives us confidence in the reading as we move forward. The present card up at the top, next bullet, how does this card relate to the past and future? You can just continue the story around this imaginary clock. Go to the next bullet. You see the idea here with the near future and finally the outcome. So if I have the time and the client is an active enough listener that listening to what can sometimes, honestly, be a little bit of a monologue. If I go through all of the cards, all the way through to the outcome card, and I tell the whole thing story style, that can take some time. But a lot of clients like that. A lot of clients like to interrupt and go, but I have this question. I allow for that because I want the reading to go where they want it to go. But if I'm given permission to tell them the story all the way from the root and the near past that I'm seeing all the way through to the future outcome, it can be incredibly valuable. A lot of the time I find, even if I pause, which I try to do when I'm giving readings, if they're live, and I really allow for time in there for clients to write things down, and I just don't hear anything from the client. I'll just carry on with that story a lot of the time, because that's a very natural flow for a reading. Storytelling is just so innate for humans. You'll very often find that comes very easily to you, to sort of follow the reading through from cards 1 through 10, storytelling fashion. Okay, let's look specifically at the time frame question, where it says root, past, future, outcome. What time frame seems to be suggested here? What I'm getting at there is, if you get a good dialogue going with a client and you've described a pretty accurate route and near past to them, at that point, if you get confirmation from them that yes, that something with that story resonates, and you can ask them about how long that feels like it has been the way things have gone, about how deeply into the past does the situation you've just described, the experience, the energetic you've just described, feel like it's been going on. If they can answer that question, maybe they'll say, oh, about the last month, or maybe they'll say about the last 2 days, maybe they'll say about the last 5 years. Whatever their concept of that time span of that past experience is, I have found that the reading progresses from there. If they can give me a time down into that root past and how far back into the root past that kind of makes sense for them, and I'll take the most immediate sense of that time that they give me, through to if they can even give a sense of the near past card. Then what I usually do is I project that far into the future to get a good read on the time span that we're probably talking about when we're looking at the near future card. And I'll do the same thing when I'm looking ahead to the outcome card. I'll sort of glance back at how far in the past the client was able to describe to me that experience of the root past took place. So there's a lot of information in there that the client can give you, that then you can help them out back and say, well, this reading kind of goes that span into the future too. That can often be very valuable to them, make a lot of sense to them when you show them that layout. The attitude card, card number 7 at the bottom. Taking what you have learned from the other cards thus far, how can you empathize with the querent's attitude? What explains it? What is the suggested prescription here? Okay, so the attitude can dictate so much about the outcome, about everything and how everything is manifesting for a person. The attitude that we go through our lives with really filters our experience. It affects what we notice and what we don't notice in life. Sometimes if I have an attitude card that strikes me that maybe this is a little bit of an unhealthy attitude, and I feel like a better attitude could be more useful to the client in getting where they want to go, the attitude card in that case becomes a talking point. The environment card, likewise, sometimes that will stand out at me way more than anything going on with the client's attitude. If the attitude looks great, I congratulate them, usually, because that's really nice to do. And then the environment card, what is helpful about the environment and what is unhelpful? Whether the environment feels helpful or unhelpful, you can sometimes get an impression of at first glance just by looking at the card. Whether or not you understand fully every single little meaning of every card in a tarot deck, you can sometimes get a sense of that feeling. This card feels helpful, or this card feels not helpful. The next sentence I want to explain a bit. I've written here, what feels prescriptive, and I've got the word prescriptive in quotation marks, about the environment card. What that means is, the word prescriptive I've found to be a very useful word when I'm reading tarot cards. Something that feels prescriptive in a tarot card reading rather than descriptive is the difference between the tarot reading or the intuitive reading behind the tarot reading having some suggestions about what to do to improve outcomes or manifest desired results, That is what I mean by a prescriptive reading. It's like the tarot card's prescription for your life, what to do about things, versus descriptive. Sometimes we get descriptive information, and that just feels like it's information describing the scenario in a little bit more detail for the client, not necessarily telling them what to do about it, but just giving them some insight into what the environment usually is. And so we find that sometimes that's a good question to pose to ourselves if we have time to examine the environment card in detail. What feels unavoidable? What is avoidable? Why? Some tarot cards look like there are choices. Some tarot cards look like there are decisions. A tarot card will give you an impression of whether an unavoidable scenario is being dealt with, or whether a choice is being made to better an outcome. And sometimes, you'll see a choice being made to worsen an outcome as well, but that's kind of rare from what I've seen, especially with paying tarot clients. But okay, so that's the first page of bullet points there. I'm just going to kind of put these last ones up on the screen and read through them a little bit more quickly, because I don't want to make this training go much further. And I think most of you guys sort of have the gist of what these prompt questions can do for you as a new reader. They can really give you things to talk about in your reading, to fill that hour or 90-minute or 3-hour session that you've just sold. And they can be incredibly great journaling questions too, if you're on a path where you're just doing a simple practice where you're sharpening your own intuition and you're getting into the habit of using this just for yourself. It's tremendous journaling questions. If you did one of these a day or one of these a week and journaled, imagine how much introspective insight into your own life you could get over the course of half a year or a year. Okay, let me read through these a little bit more quickly then. First bullet at the top of this page says the hopes, dreams, fears, and inner world card. This is card 9. What must we come to terms with? What needs to be made conscious? What needs more focus? What needs less focus? These are all questions that can sometimes feel like the right question to ask when you're looking at that card. It deals with the inner world. It deals with unconscious and subconscious motivations for the querent. It's a fascinating card, and I usually tell people knowing is half the battle with this card, meaning there usually isn't much to do other than reveal what your hopes, dreams, and fears are. And just that insight alone can solve so much, because it gives so much clarity to so many people. So that's an example of a descriptive feeling card most of the time. But even though it isn't necessarily prescriptive, doesn't tell you to do much, it just tells you what is, that can be incredibly helpful. Next bullet point. If you could choose only 2 lessons from this reading and summarize them in a sentence each, what would they be? If you can get good at this, if this feels like a fun prompt question to ask yourself when you're doing readings, you might be really good at doing kind of what I'm doing in a Facebook group right now, where I'm literally summarizing for people mini readings. I give them a sentence or 2, 2 lessons. So I kind of take the big picture of a reading, 2 things pop out at me, and I go with that, and I write a couple of sentences and move on. And those can be incredibly powerful if you're good and you build your confidence and you get really good at your accuracy with those readings. That can be really a great way to go to build your business. I love doing mini readings. And also, if people just aren't clear at the end and you have to sum up because you've given them way too much information, this can be a good refocusing question to go back to. Okay. Are there any major arcana cards? How many and where? And does anything about them seem to relate to any other card? The major arcana cards we're going to go into in further trainings for some of the students enrolled in my full courses. The majors are a focus that is one of the most immersive focuses of my trainings, because they don't have a suit allocated to them like the minor arcana cards do. There are 4 suits worth of minor arcana cards. There are 56 minor arcana cards in a deck of tarot cards. There are also 22 major arcana cards with some absolutely mind-boggling connections to some of the leading spiritualities and philosophies and faiths and religions of the Western world and some of the Eastern world as well. The major arcana cards number 22, a very sacred number for Judaica and all of the writing around the Kabbalah. That number corresponds to the Hebrew letters of the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, and is a very highly sacred number. So 22 and 56 add up to 78, which is the total number of cards. Major arcana cards are a minority. They're extremely special cards when they show up. There's a whole course of study there with the majors. Obviously, when a major arcana card shows up within 10 cards, it's sort of a focus point. Whatever that position in the reading is, it means, hey, this is really important. Pay special attention to this, because a major arcana card showed up there. I'll say more about that in further trainings for students enrolling in the full courses. What numbers repeat and relate? There are patterns of number that we discuss and really gain a working knowledge of pretty quickly in Tarot for Beginners. And when you have a working knowledge of number, if the same numbers or the same multiples keep coming up in a reading, that can feel very significant, and there's an interpretation there just waiting. What numbers are different? Same sort of a question. These are just kind of prompts. I'm going to move on pretty quickly through these last ones. Images, symbols, and colors jumping out at you. If one card really draws your focus, whatever position that card resides in could be a really meaningful focus for you. Write a sentence for each card, phrased as a question. This is kind of an access consciousness exercise for those of you who've gone through access consciousness trainings. But very simply put, the human brain and mind is remarkable at answering any question it's posed. Sometimes it just needs a little bit to chew over and get a really great, well thought out answer from every part of the human mind. Subconscious, conscious working together. So a really great trick here is to do a card reading, write a sentence, a question for each card, read those questions to yourself, and then go to sleep and dream. And that's a good way to percolate on some issue that you're digesting or addressing in your life. Next bullet down, very great exercise to do after you've done that percolation if you have the time. Write a sentence for each card phrased as an affirmation. And finally, write a prayer or a meditation for the reading. These last 2 bullet points, I'm going to sort of segue into an opportunity that we have for mastery students to evolve past this training if you are ready for more today. I have a package that we have put together, and we've got 35 spots available in this package this week, where you actually get a Celtic cross reading, a full personal one-on-one Celtic cross reading from me to you. You also get 2 courses, and you get a package of discovery trainings where you can learn the meanings of some significant tarot cards in your life based on your birth data and things like that. But very simply included in this package, I have something that directly relates to these last 2 bulleted suggestions here. We are including, for everyone who wants to enroll here today, receiving a reading, receiving the courses, receiving the Destiny Discovery package as well. We're also including a full download of a 78-page manual that I put together a few years ago. It's 78 different affirmations that correspond to each of the tarot cards in the 78 card deck of tarot cards. So if you want to enroll in this today and you get the idea and you want to work with a Celtic cross reading, it can be a wonderful reading to really pick up speed as an intuitive reader really quickly. It's just such an elegant reading. What you can do with the download of what I call the Tarot Healing Guidebook is you can, with any card that sticks out at you in any of the ways we've discussed here today, you can simply reference that card in the guidebook, and there will be a consciously languaged, positive manifestors affirmation. And all of the affirmations are keyed in for best outcome for everyone involved, and everything there that you're going to be using is powerful but very positive. With positive intention, these affirmations are given. So these affirmations can sort of read, you can put 10 of them together if you do a 10 card spread and read it like a prayer or a meditation. You could do that for a week, and that's some way that I've found that really works well even for beginners to get the intuitive insights of a great Celtic cross reading and immediately start doing the work to manifest what your soul has just shown you, at least energetically and visually with a reading, what your best outcome is. The package on offer here again, 35 students have the ability to sign up for this week. There should be a button on the screen or on the page that you're on. If you scroll down, you'll see a button. It says something like find out more. If you click on that button, it's going to take you through to all of the details of this package that we've put together. But the summary of that one more time for anyone who's interested, I do recommend picking this up as soon as you can, because we do only have 35 spots. The reason they are restricted spaces in this enrollment package is because you get a full one-on-one Celtic cross reading. I'll do the Celtic cross reading for you. When you enroll in this package, you get to submit a reading request to me personally, and I give you a 10 card reading. So that is included in this package, along with our Tarot for Beginners course, which is 16 video lessons that will guide you through learning the patterns of the tarot in about the same amount of time as a weekend immersion workshop. But the beautiful thing about how this course is set up for you is these 16 video classes are with you for life. You get lifetime access to the links to these courses so that you can play them as many times as you would like and on your own schedule. They'll always be there for you whenever you want to go through them. So Tarot for Beginners is yours as part of this package, and then the other more advanced class that we're additionally enrolling students in when they sign up gives you a whole course of hands-on training in the Celtic cross reading. We also have a bonus for anyone interested in enrolling in this package today that includes a year in my Intuition Mastery Circle, which is a private group. We meet online, and as you go through my courses and trainings, you'll also start receiving a master class every single week into your inbox all year long. The master classes are in video format, and they'll be in all sorts of subjects that you'll be able to dive right into whatever interests you after taking the prerequisite class of Tarot for Beginners. So we'll have master classes on all sorts of more advanced subjects about really advancing your intuitive skills beyond the basics for you, available all year long in this package. This package is valued at well over $500. I do all the math a little bit more specifically on that page if you want to click through and hear all the details of this package. I would love to have you join us. I would love to read for you and train up more tarot and intuitive students. I'd love you to be a part of our year together. Thank you so much for joining me for this masterclass. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you again really soon.